This is my Father's world, and to my listening ear.
Depending upon discussions that we get into tonight, we may get real close to getting to the end of this book. And the reason I say that is because really and truly from here on out it's pretty straightforward. And yet last week as we ended, we were down at verses 57 through 60, and we were talking about the fact that Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus has taken and went and asked for the body of Jesus. They took it off the cross and they prepared it quickly for burial. And then Joseph lays Jesus' body in his own tomb. And one of the things that's just an interesting side note for me is when you look at the description of the tomb in verse 60, it tells us that he laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn out in the rock. In other words, it was not just a cave like a lot of them that had been reworked, but this one is actually one that he had paid people to quarry out. So we're talking a high dollar little endeavor here. And then in verse 61, and there was Mary Magdalene, the other Mary, sitting over against the sepulchre. Now the next day that followed, the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees came together unto Pilate, saying, Sir, we remember that deceiver said, while he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise again. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away. And say unto the people, He is risen from the dead, so that the last hour shall be worse than the first. And Pilate said unto them, You have a watch, go your way, and make sure as you can. So they went, made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone and setting a watch. As you get into the latter part, the making sure of the body of Christ, there's a few little things here that we need to take note of. First off, have you ever discussed or looked at who makes up part of the chief priest? There is one group of people we haven't mentioned by name in quite a while. Who is it? No, of the Jewish sects, the parties. The Sadducees. The Sadducees are a part of the Jewish clans that makes up the chief priest. Now, not all chief priests are Sadducees, but a big majority of them are, historically. When we look at this particular passage, what is one of the main doctrines of the Sadducees? What do they not believe? They do not believe in a resurrection at all. Which one of the things I always had a hard time understanding about the Jews. How any Jew that is brought up being schooled the way that they were, how they could come up not believing in a resurrection. I mean, because you're talking about something that goes back to Abraham. And, the patriarchal law and the fact that God, dealing with those fathers way back there, he taught them about this. And yet here you've got a large portion of the elite of the Jews that don't believe in the resurrection. In fact, you know, the Apostle Paul in his trials back in Acts chapter 23 or 23, right in there. He used that to his advantage when the parties were after him, and he brought up the teachings about the resurrection to get the Pharisees over on his side so that he would at least have some support there, and then he turned around and left them all arguing. So here in verse 62, as you see this starting to unfold, Jesus has already been put in the tomb, and now these chief priests and the Pharisees, they come together again for the sole purpose of having Pilate to seal up this tomb. And the reason being, they first off notice how that they call him the deceiver. And I'd be real careful right there. Because there's somebody else that is called the deceiver in the Greek language. Satan. So they are actually starting to accuse Jesus here of being satanic in a fashion. Yes, sir.
Timeline-wise, this is Saturday.
Yes.
When they should have been
Observing the Sabbath. In fact, it's interesting. Well, I'm saying that a lot this evening. It's interesting. When you look at the disciples, and when I say the disciples, all of the disciples, they are the ones who have those Christian beliefs, and yet they are the ones that are observing the Sabbath. And the Pharisees and the chief priests, these Sadducees, since they are the teachers of the law, you would think that they would be the ones that were observing the Sabbath. In fact, they had gone and petitioned Pilate to take and break legs on those that were on the cross so that they could get them down before the Sabbath.
This was a high Sabbath.
Huh?
This was
A high Sabbath, yes, sir. And yet, they have broken the Sabbath in order to go talk to Pilate. In fact, if you remember, we even discussed this a little bit when we were discussing the trial of Jesus, how that they would not enter into the pavement so that they would not be defiled, so that they could observe. What good did it do them? They still didn't observe it. So what they have done is, on that Sabbath, they took and turned around, and they went to Pilate and brought this to him and said, remember that this deceiver said that after 3 days I'm going to rise again. So once again, they are using doctrines that they claimed not to know about against Jesus. In other words, they really knew more and understood more than what we give them credit for. You know, they would claim not to have knowledge of things, but yet when they made their arguments, you find out very quickly they did know. They knew Jesus' arguments. So what they were doing, they're not doing ignorantly. Yes, ma'am.
And they're not doing it publicly. Because
Not in front of the Jews, they're not. You're right.
I mean, and you would think that if they really thought he was a deceiver, they would have been making known that
Oh, yeah.
to prove that he couldn't possibly rise from the dead
But then again, there's still that fear of the people. You know, that was the reason they did everything else in secret, was so that the people did not turn against them.
So it sounds like they're just putting all the loose ends together so they don't get.
They're trying to. They're trying to put those loose ends together, but in reality, this is some of those loose ends they should have left alone. And here's why. Let's keep reading here for a minute. Because they remembered that the deceiver had said while he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise. Command therefore the sepulchre be made sure until the third day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away. Would that even be a possibility?
Would it have been a possibility?
Would it have been a possibility? Have you ever stopped and really looked at the disciples' attitude about the resurrection?
Why would they?
Exactly. And that's kind of my point. You know, your chief priests and your Pharisees, they're fighting over a mute point. And I'll show you why. Go to John 20.
They've already left him unguarded one night,
Oh, yeah.
so if they wanted him, they could have.
Go to John 20. I want to show you something about the disciples. We're going to look at a couple of 3 verses here real quick. In John 20, let's look at verse 6 and following. It says, Then cometh Simon Peter following him, and went into the sepulchre, and seeth the linen clothes lie, and the napkin that was about his head, not lying with the linen clothes, but wrapped together in a place by itself. Then went in also the other disciple, which came first to the sepulchre, and he saw and he believed. Verse 9, For as yet they knew not the scripture, that he must rise again from the dead. Yes, sir.
This is, they did not understand the better example.
Yes. And they did not believe that he was going to be raised from the dead. See, that's the thing that we don't often pick up on. Now, this is after the resurrection, and this is Peter and John, and they did not believe that Jesus was going to be raised. Yes, sir.
This is after Mary had discovered the tomb was empty. So,
And we're fixing to look at that verse. You know, when Mary comes and tells them that Jesus has risen, they looked at her and said, No, he didn't. Mark 16, if I got this one right. Mark 16. Yeah. In Mark 16, verse 9, now when Jesus was risen early, the first day of the week, he appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had cast 7 devils, and she went and told them that had been with him as they mourned and wept. And they, when they had heard that he was alive and had not been seen, believed not. He dead. We saw him dead. Verse 14, and after he appeared unto the 11, as they sat at meat and upbraided them with their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they believed not them which had seen him after he was risen.
Even Thomas, until he saw him again, until he actually got to see him.
And one more time, I want y'all to get this in your minds real good about poor old doubting Thomas. Poor old doubting Thomas was not requiring anything that the other 10 had not already had. When Jesus came to them, he showed him the spots in his arms, he showed him his side, and he says, believe. When they told Thomas, Thomas turned around, he said, unless I see. Because see, they told him. And he said, until I see it, I'm not going to believe. I mean, after all, we saw him dead. You see, the Pharisees and the chief priests, they were worrying about something that really and truly, the possibilities of that happening were not there. Because at the time, the disciples were worried about what? Staying alive. They weren't going to get caught at the tomb. So you've got these passages that show us their disbelief.
I can see the zealots being more likely to steal his body just so they could keep the unrest going there in Jerusalem.
Yeah, I would agree. One more. Let's go one more passage. Mark 9. Now this is talking about the transfiguration. And in Mark 9, let's begin verse 7. And there was a cloud that overshadowed them, and a voice coming out of the cloud saying, this is my beloved Son, hear him. And suddenly, when they had looked around about, they saw no man anymore save Jesus only with themselves. And as they came down from the mountain, he charged them that they should tell no man what things they had seen till the Son of Man was risen from the dead. And they kept these sayings with themselves, questioning one with another what the rising from the dead should mean. And I love the way the King James says that one. They were wondering within themselves. They were discussing with themselves, what in the world would rising from the dead mean? You know. But this is that mind, and this is the mindset Jesus, you know, as you remember, as we were talking about his teachings with them, how over and over he kept trying to get them to understand. He kept saying, have I been so long with you and you still not getting the grasp of this yet? You still don't understand that I'm fixing to have to die so that I can be raised? So that you can have life? Really? You still don't get it? And even after his resurrection, they don't get it. It's not until Acts chapter 2 that the light comes on. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I love how by the inspiration, we know we have this, that they are worried about the disciples coming and stealing him away by night, which is kind of the pot calling the kettle black.
Oh, yes.
That's exactly what they did.
Well, and again, the people who make the best detectives are the ones that think like a crook. Now, I've had the pleasure of knowing many detectives. I am full supporter of law enforcement officers. But I have had the pleasure of knowing several brothers in Christ who are Dallas police detectives. And I'll guarantee if it wasn't for Christianity and their badge, they would be the crooks. And it's because that's the way they think. And that's because of how they think, that's what makes them good detectives. It is also, when you look at these Pharisees and these chief priests, they are doing the things they're doing because they themselves are the crooks. And that's what you see. They are behaving like crooks because that is their nature. That is the reason Judas played so well with them. Because he was a crook by nature. And so here they're trying to think of all the possibilities. Okay, what is the worst thing that could happen between now and Monday? I know what it is. Because if that was my rabbi that was laying in that tomb and he had made these promises, I'd be going in there, I'd be getting him out, and I'd go hide that body, and I'd claim he was raised from the dead. So that's what we're going to prevent that. Yeah, okay. They should have listened to Gamaliel. If this is from God, do you really think you're going to withstand God? Sometimes you got to back away and just let God do what God's going to do. And this would have been one of those good places, but they didn't. Let me find myself here. 27, deceiver, rise again. When we get back to verse 64, and he command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure until the third day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away. And that's what Jesse was talking about. That's exactly how they got Jesus. They came in the middle of the night to the garden where they knew that he was going to be and arrested him. And they had already had 3 trials before the Jewish people knew anything about it. And so here they're trying to prevent that, and he warns Pilate about what was said. And so Pilate said unto them, you have a watch. Go your way and make it as sure as I can. Now, I'm not going to go over to John and Mark either. But it's worth me noting that when they go to Pilate, especially when they, back with Joseph of Arimathea, when they went to Pilate, Pilate first off was surprised that Jesus was already dead. And then when he gives the body away, well, he assumes that he's through with it. And now when they're coming back, Pilate, you kind of catch it in the language, Pilate is getting just a little bit deterred at these people. Leave me alone. Just how far do I have to take and go to appease your sense of self-worth? I murdered the man for you. What else you want me to do? Yes, ma'am?
Before we go further, on 64, that last phrase, so the last error shall be worse than the first. What are they saying the first error was?
Deception. Deception is really truly a better translation than error. And the deception there was the fact that he claiming to be the Son of God, and that the claim that, I can rebuild the temple, the deceptions that Jesus was making in his teachings. And so in their eyes. So they're
worried that
and if they steal him away and it looks like he was raised on the first day of the week, well, now that teaching, that deception, that's going to be a whole lot worse than him just claiming to be the Son of God. Because now we got to figure out a way to combat.
So it's not saying that they were in error.
No, deception is a better way. But again, the King James 1611 era there, that's what that entailed. when you do the etymology there. So Pilate, verse 65, he turns around and he says, okay, you have your watch. Go your way. Make it as sure as you can. Now notice, they're not using temple guards. They're using Roman guards with authority to make this tomb secure. That is the reason Pilate had to give them license, so that his men could go. But now they went one step farther. When he says, you make it as sure as you can. So they went and they literally make the sepulcher itself secure. They made sure that the body was in it. They made sure everything was there. Remember, Joseph of Arimathea had rolled the stone in front of it when he was through so that nothing would happen. Well, after they have made double sure what is in that tomb, then they take and reseal the tomb, and then it says that they set a seal. Now, they literally would take, like you've seen on National Geographic and the archaeologist stuff, they had a way of fastening ropes to both the stone as well as the wall of the tomb. And then they sealed it. And then they would take either wax or clay and put that around the knot. And then they took the seal of authority, which here probably would have been the seal of Pilate, and stamped that, and that seal meant that if you broke that seal, then you did so at the risk of death. You died if you broke that seal. And then they set the guards. So it was seriously sealed. I mean, they had made it secure. Yes, ma'am.
But it seems like here, you're right, they have the temple guards. Why didn't they just use their own temple guards? Because
No authority.
they don't want any implication that they've had it in their hands and put the jar, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, no authority at all. And this way, they have Rome to blame. And how'd you like the way I switch that? They have Rome to blame. If the people blow up, well, it's not us, Rome did it. You know? So you see how deceptive these people are that are calling Jesus the deceiver. This is how they think. Questions, thoughts, comments at this point?
They'd already lost two of their priests to this religion.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't trust the guards,
Well, I'm with you there too.
but some of them could have already been swayed.
Well, and you know that they were.
But the Romans, it didn't matter, because you forfeited your life if your charge was gone or dead or whatever.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to worry about it.
And the book of John and Luke both, when it comes to how they persuade those guards to lie about him being stole, just really, I don't know what kind of clout they claimed to them guards that they had to get those guards to do that, but that was pretty brassy. That was pretty brassy. Yes, ma'am.
Well, and how did they make sure what was in the sepulcher without defiling themselves on a Sabbath?
They sent the guards in.
Okay, so they didn't get visual confirmation themselves?
But what would it matter? They have already broken the Sabbath by going to Pilate.
Well, that's right.
So what's one more?
Nobody knows.
I mean, and I know I'm kind of making fun of that right there, but it's not funny. Because when you look at it, how do I say this one? How many times can you think about people who are supposed to be Christians living a certain way, and yet when you look at their lives, it's just the opposite? Well, it's still happening today. These Pharisees, these chief priests, they're no different than people today. You know, we have to work hard to be Christians. It is a work in progress. Yes, ma'am.
I was just thinking, this is kind of like the rain in the swamp. Everything Jesus has stood for is revealing
All the dirt. All the dirt. Did you have your hand? So as you go into chapter 28, and again, you know, sometimes I just flat don't like the way the chapter breaks fall. And this is one of those times. Because when you look at it, they set a watch. In the end of the Sabbath, as it began to dawn toward the first day of the week. Now, you have people that want to play the chronology game and say that it's off, that Jesus wasn't in the grave 3 days. Yeah, he was. Went in Friday night, was in there all day Saturday, and didn't come out until Sunday morning. It is amazing to me, there's that word again. It's amazing to me how that the inspiration of God gives us the answers that we need. And verse 1 of chapter 28 gives us the chronology of Jesus in the tomb. Right down to the point where, you know, some people would take and say, well, that was actually Saturday night getting ready for Sunday morning. Well, how do you figure that when it tells you that the day was dawning? This is Sunday morning at daylight. So I don't care if you want to look at Jewish time or Roman time, it's Sunday morning. And so when it was the dawn toward the first day of the week, here comes Mary Magdalene and the other Mary to see the sepulchre. Now, if you pick up Mark 16:1, you find out that Salome is also with them. Then you pick up Luke chapter 24, verse 10, you find out that Joanna's with them with some more women. It wasn't just the two. That whole group of women that has been following Jesus throughout his ministry, they're still worried about their Lord and Savior. Because they know that poor old Joseph and Nicodemus, they're men. So their preparation of Jesus' body would have been done in the manly style. In other words, here's the junk that we're supposed to have. Let's get him down, wash him up, spin him up, throw him up there, shut the thing. We go observe the Passover or the Sabbath. Those women knew that. How many times, you know, I've had things put together for whatever it was. One congregation at Ferris, we were having a dinner after a singing, and so that Friday I spent all day in there cleaning up the kitchen and getting everything ready for everybody to come. Lo and behold, about 5:30, here come every woman in that congregation. And I said, I've cleaned it. And they said, yeah, okay. Move. Okay. Well, that's what these women are doing. Thank you for your troubles, Joseph, Nicodemus, but we're fixing to take care of the Lord's body the way it's supposed to be taken care of. We're going to make sure that all the intricacies of our loved one is going to be taken care of. And behold, look at the excitement here. And behold, there was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. Now, go back to Mark 16, verse 3, and you find out that while these women were walking, the whole conversation was, how in the world are we going to roll that stone back? And don't forget, that stone's been sealed.
Would they have known that?
No, they probably would not have. But they are trying to figure out how this group of women is going to roll that huge stone away. But yet, as they are getting there, there is an earthquake. Now, I want you to stop and think about this for just a minute. When was the last earthquake that we talked about? At his death. At the death of Jesus, the earth split. At the resurrection of Jesus, the earth split. When you take and you look at the intense power of God at work, they're going to take care of the body of Jesus. They're trying to figure out how in the world we're going to roll that stone, and as they are nearing the tomb, you have an earthquake. And you notice that Matthew uses the word for, the cause of an effect. That's exactly what Matthew is doing there with the Greek. He is showing you the cause of the earthquake. The cause of the earthquake was not the fault that runs 686 miles down through that Judean plateau. The cause of the earthquake was the power of God working through the angel of the Lord, moving the stone. And that is exactly the reason Matthew says it just that way. There was a great earthquake, for the angel of the Lord descended from heaven and came and rolled back the stone from the door and sat upon it. Now you think about the king of the universe just breaking the royal seal. That seal doesn't mean nothing to me. I'll send my messenger down there. He'll roll that stone back and he'll sit right on top of that stone and wait for anybody to come that wants to come discuss it. You notice down a little farther where it says, and he sat upon it. His countenance was like lightning and his raiment white as snow. When you talk about lightning, throughout scriptures, especially you get over it like in the book of Daniel, Daniel chapter 2, that's talking about the powers of heaven. When you see heaven in action, the prophets discussed it in the shape of lightning. And then when it talks about his garments being white, what does white tell you? The purity. Now, what did they call him back up in 63? The deceiver? You're looking at a spot where God is kind of making a point here. He said, you better wake up and you look at the power that you're fighting against. And for the fear of him, the keepers did shake and became as dead men. Now you think about this. The king of all the earth has just defeated death and is alive. And the representations of the Roman Empire are laid back as if they were dead. The reversal of all that they have had at this point. You might want to mark Revelation chapter 1, verse 17 here, when Jesus reminds John, I was the one that was dead, but now I'm alive. And you're going to be writing to those that claim to be alive, but they're dead. We're going to finish this next week. Promise you. Because chapter 28, we can roll through it pretty quick.
I don't believe they could have found a more appropriate song for what little I've got to talk about here tonight, but, if I was gonna give a message, a title tonight, it'd be concern. I don't know if anybody has noticed or not, but since about March, things haven't been normal. In fact, they haven't even been close to normal. And, it has turned my hair grayer, and Terry's hair grayer, and Pat's hair grayer, and made Mike's grow with a shiny spot in the middle of it. It has, I'm telling you folks, I'm surprised that library still has walls and tables still level. We have pounded our heads against the wall and beat them against the table, and it has been a trying time, I'll just, to say the least. I don't know of anything that, we've ever been up against that would even, nothing compared to it. Well, I don't know where you even start. You know, we came back to church for a while, just on Sunday morning, and we ended up Sunday morning without class, or, without class on Sunday nights, and then added class on Wednesday, and so forth forward. And we hope it continues. All I know is that as far as the four that I mentioned here that have been trying to oversee this deal, we're in over our heads. We are way over our heads. And that's kind of what the night is about. You know, the way we look at it, if there's 60 here tonight, the way we look at it, there's 120. There's 60 spiritual souls here, and there's 60 physical people here. And the way we look at it, we have to try to take care of all 120. And it has been tough at times, and it still is. But we just hope that we can keep on, and that is the full plan, is to stay with our classes now, because it is so important for everybody, especially our youngsters. We want them in class. We want them with that Bible open, and we want them learning more and more every time they walk in the door here, because in life they're going to need it, and we want to sure try to get it to them. And this is open. If somebody wants to talk after this next line here, we're open for suggestions. But if with school starting, I know a lot of teachers, y'all have probably been through a lot of training, a lot of different stuff. If there is anything that you see that we're doing here that we can do better, get with one of the others, or get with Mike, somebody. Let's talk it over. And if it looks like something we can implant into our classes and into our worship, virus, it'll beat us. We're gonna stay with it. And when it's all said and done, with all our work and God on our side, we're gonna come out the other side of this thing and, you know, hopefully be stronger than ever. It's what the Bible says, there's a time to plant, a time to harvest, and maybe it's what we're doing right now, maybe we're planting. And it may be a good time to be planting, because I think people have a better, not a better attitude, but a more receptive attitude right now. A lot of people probably do than they've had at times, because, as I've said many times, you know, everybody has a window of opportunity. And this stuff that's going on right now may be opening some of these windows of opportunity up a little bit. And it may just be a crack, but, you know, we might plant that seed just exactly the right time, and it may fall through that crack and come up. So, let's just do the best we can do. And like I say, if somebody sees something that's going on in our classes that